Well, welcome, Practical Finances friends and family. This is Curtis, your host, and I want to thank you for joining me for episode 5 of the fall season. Man, time is flying. My special guest today is Legal Shield Independent Associate and owner of the Nathan Group, Michelle Shulman. Now, Michelle and I have been colleagues for over 2 years now. Now, we both are BRN, which is Business Referral Network North members in the Goodlettsville, Madison area, just right outside of Nashville. Now, I saw a presentation that she conducted on Wheels, and I knew that the information she could share was going to be beneficial to the audience, to you all. Now, the episode is going to be a little bit different this time in that Michelle is going to give us a great PowerPoint presentation about Wheels. All right. So with that being said, let me introduce her. Michelle, how are you, ma'am?
I'm very well. Thanks, Curtis.
Good, good. Well, thank you again for joining us and taking time out of your schedule to help educate our audience on Wheels today.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to start with a disclaimer.
Okay.
Everyone needs to know that I am not an attorney.
Right.
Any information I'm giving in this presentation is information only.
Gotcha.
So before you prepare any documents, before you make any decisions, please confer with an estate attorney so that your specific needs can be met and your questions answered.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for letting us know that up front. But it's still, regardless, the information in the presentation that I was able to witness was fantastic. And I still think it's going to be extremely beneficial. All right.
I hope so.
Well, I tell you, let's kind of jump right in, Michelle. What I do with each one of my guests each week is the first question that I ask is I want my guests to humanize themselves, let them know, let the audience know a little bit about you. So if you would, tell us about who you are, Michelle. What do you do? Tell us about you.
Well, I'm married, have a couple of grown children and 3 almost adult grandchildren. I love them obviously very, very much. Professionally, I have been an independent sales associate with Legal Shield for 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
And and what Legal Shield does, it provides access for individuals, families, and small business owners to quality attorneys across the United States for a small monthly subscription fee.
Fantastic. Okay. And I'm sure in terms of, I have Legal Shield. So, it's wills, it's documents that you may receive, warranties, things of that nature. If you get a car ticket, auto ticket, you can call Legal Shield for assistance in that, correct?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
It's actually any need that the most families have will be covered by the fee, and small businesses as well. So the biggest thing is just being able to have an advocate, to be able to call and ask a question and not worry about, is this person qualified and how much is it going to cost? And like you said, being able to get letters written to be able to help you out with things, and having a document review before you sign it to make sure it's in your best interest.
Sure.
And one of the best benefits is what we're talking about today, to be able to have your estate documents prepared.
Fantastic. Okay. Good information. Good stuff. Again, you all, Legal Shield, great program, great product. This is a very litigious society, so we need as much legal help as we can get. And not everybody, I would say a small percentage of us know an attorney that we can trust, that we can go to. And with Legal Shield, you have just a whole team of attorneys that can assist you. So thank you for sharing that, Michelle.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess we're just going to get started. We're just going to jump right in and start your presentation. What I plan to do is just, if I need to interject or anything, or have a question that needs a little clarification or something like that, you mind if I jump in and ask that question, Michelle?
Oh, please do. Please do.
Okay. All right.
Anything you think that your audience would be interested in knowing.
Fantastic. Well, we'll do that. All right. Well, then we'll take a second here so Candace can share the screen and give you control, and you're ready to roll.
I'm good to go. Good to go. So as Curtis said, this is a workshop that I do routinely for both members of Legal Shield and anyone who's interested in starting their will. We know that only 44% of Americans actually have a will. And in the 20 years I've been representing Legal Shield, I've spoken to approximately 15 to 20,000 people. And I know that that percentage is much lower. Probably only about 20% of Americans have their last will and testament, living will, and advanced healthcare directive put in place and current.
Oh, goodness. Just 20%.
And most people, I'm sorry?
Just 20%. Wow.
That's it. That's it. And the reasons are people say, I don't need it if I want everything to go to my kids. Well, that's probably a horrible decision because kids fight over things. One of my most vivid memories, I was in my early teens and my paternal grandmother passed away. And coming home from the funeral, we went to my grandparents' home and I hear this caterwauling, this yelling and screeching. And I walk in and it's my father's two sisters fighting over one of my grandmother's fur coats.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just horrifying. So with your will, you can avoid all of that. You make the decision who's going to get what and who's not going to get what. Another perception is my family members will take my kids. Please, if you have minor children, children under the age of 18, please set up ahead of time who you want to raise your children if, heaven forbid, the unthinkable happens. If you do not make that decision, if you do not have it in writing in a will, your state will decide who will raise your children. And I've spoken to many social workers who have told me horror stories about, grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins trying to step in and take the kids, and the Department of Children's Services coming in and taking the kids out of the home and putting them into foster care. And this is especially true if there's a disagreement among family members on, who's going to take the children.
Okay.
This is something a lot of people say, I don't have anything. I don't need a will. I don't have anything. Well, you have things. You just may not put a lot of dollar value on them, which is okay. They may not be valuable, but they may have meaning to you. Sure. So with your will, you can make sure that those aren't thrown in the trash or they're not put in a garage sale. Let your family know what your wishes are. Another thing is that accidents happen, horrible things happen, and oftentimes there's financial settlements. Think about 9/11 and the almost 3,000 lives that were lost. Many of those people were one paycheck away from being homeless. They were drivers, they were delivery people, they were custodians, and the government settled hundreds of thousands of dollars on their family. Well, how do you want that distributed? Who do you want to get what? Your will make sure that whatever you have will be dispersed the way you want.
Let me ask a question real quick, Michelle.
Sure.
Is there a minimum dollar amount or that can be included in a will, or even a maximum? Is there a range, I guess, is the question in terms of assets?
It's my assets. You have $10 in your bank. You decide who's going to get that $10.
Okay.
And that's what we just never know. You may do your will today and you have nothing. And a year from now, you hit the lottery and all of a sudden you're a multimillionaire.
Sure.
You may not think about updating your will at that time, but if you have a will in place, if you get hit by a truck, the next week, that $1 million will be distributed the way you want it to be. So we don't put dollar amounts. I know my husband and I, the first time we did our will, we put like dollar amounts in. Mm-hmm. And the attorney called us, our Legal Shield attorney called us and just explained that. He said, you may not know how much money you're going to have when you pass away. So it's best to put percentages. Okay. So I want everything split 50-50. I want a third here and a third here and a third there, however you choose to do it, and be very specific. And we'll talk about that a little bit later.
That makes sense, though.
Absolutely. Yes. And another perception is it's too expensive and it takes too long to do. Mm-hmm. Well, being too expensive, it can be. I've heard stories of people paying thousands of dollars to get just a will completed. Mm-hmm. And it takes too long. Well, it doesn't have to. We're going to go through tonight a questionnaire that I believe Curtis is going to make available to you.
Yes.
That you can download and fill out. And once you have this questionnaire filled out, you can just go to an estate attorney and have them prepare your will from that. If you're a Legal Shield member, all you have to do is scan it in and email it in, and an attorney will get that done for you. So it does not have to be expensive. In fact, Legal Shield can save you thousands of dollars in the preparation of your will.
And I think on the app, can't you fill out information on the Legal Shield app instead of actually printing off?
You can. It's actually a starting point. Legal Shield has an app for all of our members, and there's a will questionnaire there, but it's a basic questions. Gotcha. And once that's sent in, the attorneys will be sending you the questionnaire anyway. Gotcha. So I always say it's better to start with the questionnaire, have 3/4 of it already done. So when the attorney reviews it, if there's any questions, they can contact you and get it done quickly.
Sure. Instead of double doing, you can do it one time. Got it. Okay. So
getting a will done really gives you peace of mind. And I like to say it's the last love letter to your family. We were talking before we started recording and realized it's a very emotional thing to do. Nobody wants to think about mortality, not being here. And that conversation is very difficult, especially among family members. My husband and I are redoing our estate documents, and our adult daughter was here yesterday. And after about a half an hour, she got overwhelmed emotionally. And I can understand. I remember I couldn't imagine life without my parents. Sure. So please understand that, but it's a very, very important conversation to have, especially with you, if you're single, you choosing someone that will be able to take your wants and execute them. If you are married, or if you are in a committed relationship with your partner, so each of you are very clear on what your wishes are, and then get it down in writing so there's no question when the time comes.
Sure.
So this is the will questionnaire. I'm going to be going through it for the next couple of minutes. And again, Curtis, please don't hesitate to interrupt. As you're watching this, you may want to take some notes. We need some general information. So the first thing is your legal name. First, middle, and last. Ladies, we need your maiden name. If you've been married previously, we need all of your previous married names. Again, someone can make a claim on your estate, and this helps if all of your names are known, as well as you may have accounts that you have not changed names. All sorts of crazy things happen. So as much information as possible. Your age, your date, are you a US citizen, and where you currently live. Then we need, I'm sorry, I need to go back one.
Sure. Then
we need your spouse's date of birth. Okay. So, excuse me, your spouse's information. Full name, date of birth, your date of marriage, where you got married. Okay. Are you living with your present spouse, or are you separated? Okay. Do you have a prenup agreement? That's important to know.
That's a good question.
If you've been divorced, I have a couple of divorces in my past. You need to just list those and the date of the divorce, where it was, etc. Have you created any trusts? The attorneys need to know this so they can know how to handle it and be able to prepare your will appropriately. And do you expect any inheritance? Perhaps you have a maiden Aunt Sally and you're the last relative, and you know that she does have some things that will be passing on to you. That's good for the attorneys to know. One of the biggest things that the attorneys want to know is the approximate dollar value of your estate. Okay. And this is primarily to be able to anticipate tax ramifications. Gotcha. Now, the beautiful thing about living in Tennessee is we do not have any estate taxes. And the attorneys were telling us that as far as probate and estate taxes, until your estate reaches this year $11.58 million, it's not a great concern.
Okay.
So that's good news. You will not have a lot of money taken out of your estate until you reach that threshold.
Sure, I was close. Woo.
Yeah, right. And think about it again. It's real estate and the appraised value. Does that, when you liquidate that, will that hit that threshold? Or investments, and again, inheritances.
Sure. Sure.
could affect that, obviously.
So it's good to, in that particular case, when you obtaining that information in order to include that in the questionnaire. I mean, if you had a like a net worth sheet, for instance, that you keep up with, like I have
Sure.
mint.com. That's what I use. My net worth that is basically laid out for me every day, has all my debts, any debts that I have. It has all my assets and their values. So that will be helpful when filling something like this out. Correct?
Absolutely. In fact, you could actually print it out and attach it and send it on.
Okay. Okay.
So that way you wouldn't have to fill out the blanks. You've got everything. And
Sure.
that again would let the attorney know what that tax ramification may be.
Okay.
So that would be excellent. Yeah, your own personal P&L.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Very good, very good. Then you're going to want to fill out your dependent information. So these are your biological children, your adopted children, your stepchildren. You need to identify special needs children. For those of you that have special needs children, I hope you recognize that there needs to be a special trust created within your will so that your special needs child will be able to continue qualifying for any state or county federal aid that's received. As it was explained, if all of a sudden your estate dumps $100,000 onto the special needs child, that will probably disqualify them from many, many financial programs, Medicaid, that type of situation. Where with this trust, it will be able to divide it out in such a way that they would still be able to qualify. And you obviously want your child to be able to have the resources to be taken care of for the rest of their lives.
And that's because Medicaid has a certain income or asset limit or threshold. Is that
correct.
What that? Okay.
Correct. Okay.
Gotcha. Wow.
So those types of things. And you're going to be, like I said, identifying those. And then you're going to identify if any of your children are receiving or expect to receive Social Security benefits. And that's also where a large dollar amount would disqualify them from Social Security benefits.
Okay. Okay. That's really good information.
This is one of the biggest things if you have minor children. As you see, we talk about a guardian and a trustee. These are two different activities. The guardian is the person that is going to manage the day-to-day care of your children, making sure they're clothed, they're fed, they're going to school, they have all the enrichment that you want them to have. The trustee is the person to make sure that the funds are available for those things to occur. Okay. Oftentimes it's one and the same person.
I was going to ask if they can be the same person. Yeah.
Absolutely. If that person that you're going to be asking to take care of your children, if you're not here, if they're responsible adults, absolutely. Okay. But your sister may make the best surrogate mother possible for your children. But if she can't balance her own checkbook, you may want to think about someone else managing the money.
Gotcha.
And this is where you can talk to your financial planner. You can talk to your banker. Okay. You can talk to another adult who is responsible and see if they're willing to take that role on. As an attorney said, the last thing that you want is for that guardian to all of a sudden buy a new car and start traveling with your children's money.
Gotcha.
You want that money to be for them.
Somebody trustworthy for sure.
Absolutely. So to choose that guardian, and this sometimes it's a difficult conversation between both parents. They may disagree on who they think would be, the best guardian. But things to think about is the age of the person you're asking. Many times we think that our parents would be the best. Well, think about their age now and how old might they be when your children are 15 or 16 years old? Might they still be in the best of health? Might it be better to have a sibling or a cousin or an aunt or an uncle?
Sure.
Possibly do that. And So pick the primary person. The primary person is going to be your spouse if you predecease your spouse. And this is something else I need to say. Each one of you needs your own will. There's no such thing as a couple's last will and testament, because we never know when each of us is going to die. I hope to God I die in a tragic accident very quickly with my husband, but the likelihood of that is very small. Okay. So one of us is probably going to die first. So we each need our own will.
Michelle, I'm glad you said that, because honestly, I was kind of under the impression that this form can be done jointly, but I guess not. We are two individual and independent individuals.
That's right.
Okay. All right. That's really eye-opening for me, for sure.
So, and think about it, the things that you want to pass on and who you want to pass them on to, it may be totally different than your wife's wishes. And how you want those funds distributed may be entirely different. If I pass first, my husband acquires all my assets. That's fine. I want him to have my life insurance and for life to go on the way it is. But if he should die first, I get his assets. And then how do I choose to have those distributed when I die? So that's what we need to think about. And it's a conversation to have together, but then you may have differing opinions, such as the person I originally, when my daughter was young, when she was a minor, the person I chose to be the executor of my estate was entirely different than who my husband chose to be the executor of his estate if I wasn't around. I didn't happen to like the guy, so I didn't want him being the executor of my estate if that come to it. Okay, so that's your right. But the custodian, the guardian, and the trustee of your children, you both need to agree on that. That has to be in place, so there's no misunderstanding. And then you have to choose an alternate. If you choose grandparents to be the custodian, when the time comes, if they are infirmed or perhaps they have passed away or one of them has, and it's just not going to work, who would be the second choice that you would trust to take care of your kids? And please, you have to have the conversation with them. Make sure that they are willing to take on your children. If they have 2 children and you have 6, are they willing to raise 8 children if the time comes? That's a big, big decision and responsibility to take on.
Right.
So, and please make sure they're doing it for the right reasons. Okay, that's another thing, to have that conversation.
Right. Trustworthy.
And
the money.
I'm sorry?
Not just for the money, so to speak.
Correct. Absolutely.
You pick somebody you can trust wholeheartedly.
And they're doing that because they love you and they sincerely want your children to be raised well.
Sure.
And that's why you'll be asking them, hopefully. Okay.
Sure.
Awesome. Then we have, I'm trying to think where we are here. I can't see the screen. Okay. Then you're going to decide if you want that guardian to be the trustee. And if not, who do you choose to be the trustee? And this would be another conversation that you would have.
And again, that person, the trustee, distributes the monies.
Correct. That monitors the money and makes sure that it's distributed well. So then we move on to, how do you want those assets distributed? Okay. So what Legal Shield has done is created some simple, very common ways to do that. So A is if you are married and you say, I want my assets to pass to my spouse and children as follows. First, to my spouse, if surviving, your spouse would get 100%. And if my spouse predeceases me, my assets to be divided in equal shares to my children. Gotcha. If any of my children predeceases me, that child's share shall be distributed to his or her children in equal shares. And in the event my spouse and all of my children and descendants fail to survive me, I want my assets to be distributed as follows. Then option B is similar. I am unmarried with children, and it eliminates the spouse, and your assets will be divided in equal shares to your children, and then it follows the same way. Option C is if you want to do it a different way.
Okay.
Okay. One of our friends, I love it. He has 3 sons, and he believes that males have no intelligence until they're 30 years old. And he has a very large estate. Sure. And what he has put in his will is that as long as his sons are drug-free and are not alcoholics, they will receive $10,000 a year until they are 30 years old. Okay. At age 30, then the inheritance will be distributed as he has laid out. So you can do something of that nature.
Basically.
My grandmother, God love her, she had a substantial estate, and she took the largest portion of it, divided that among her 2 daughters. And between the 2 daughters, she had 11 grandchildren.
Goodness.
She went and had a distribution for each of the grandchildren. And she went down to the 3rd generation and had small bequeaths to the great-grandchildren that were there when she died. So everyone in the family were able to feel some of her largesse upon her passing. It's entirely up to you. You may want to leave a portion to the SPCA. You may want to leave a portion to your church. You can divide your assets however you choose, as long as it's in the will.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Next question I was going to ask, does it necessarily have to be an individual that you leave assets to? You can leave it to a charity or your church or some other organization like that, correct?
You can leave your entire estate to your cat.
Wow.
And people have done that, absolutely. And you have a guardian for your cat. Wow. Who will use the funds for the care and feeding of your cat, but then you need to have a disposition when the cat passes away.
Right. Okay.
What's going to happen to the money then, besides your children being rather unhappy until that point? So
yeah, understandably so.
You can do whatever you choose. Okay, whatever makes your heart happy. Okay. Listen, you've worked hard for this money. It's yours to spend.
Yes.
I remember my parents saying, "We're going to spend your inheritance and enjoy every minute of it." It was like, you go. It's your money. Okay.
I get you. That makes sense.
So make sure that you talk about investment property. How do you want your assets? What do you want to have done with the house? Does one of your children want to live in the house? Will they have to sell it? Will they have to buy out your other children? Get an equity loan or something to be able to divvy up the assets? Or can they keep the house for the rest of their life, and then once they die, the house is sold and the money is distributed? Think about things like that.
I have a question for you here.
Sure.
This may sound mean, and this is not me at all, but not my situation at all. But what if, do I have to necessarily leave monies or assets to my spouse? I'm just universally speaking. If I'm married, can I distribute the assets to someone other than my spouse if I'm married, or that I own?
I can't answer that. You'll have to speak to an attorney. Now, I do know that if you are like on your house, if the deed is as joint, tenants, then
right. That's a different story right there. But if I had I had my own cash in my own account, or if I had rings or I had jewelry or whatever that was separate from what we acquired together,
yes, you can leave that to individual people, right?
And again, this is not me. This is not my wife and I.
Your wife is listening.
Yeah, we share everything. We accumulated everything that we have now together, because we had nothing. We came together. So, but I'm just generally, I was just kind of curious about that.
Well, that's a great point. Understand that I know here in Tennessee, And if you have listeners in other states, they'll have to find out what their state laws are. But here in Tennessee, whatever you bring into the marriage remains yours separate from the marriage.
Okay.
So you can do as you choose with that.
Okay.
Okay. But anything that you do acquire within the marriage is, at least in Tennessee, is joint property.
Gotcha.
That will go to the wife.
And in my case, we had nothing except a car, maybe.
I understand that. Now understand, and this brings up a good point, if you die intestate, which means without a will.
Yes.
Here in Tennessee, if you have children, your wife will get 1/3 of your estate.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2/3 will be divided among your children unless a share for your child is greater than the share for your wife.
Oh, okay.
In that case, she will get the child's share, that amount, and the balance will be distributed among your children.
Okay.
But here, if you're anticipating when you pass away, your wife inheriting everything, again, if you don't have a large estate, she may need all of that to be able to live the rest of her life.
Sure.
And these days, we're living long enough, and what's a very scary thought, what happens if you live long enough and you need assisted living care? Very, very expensive.
Yes, ma'am.
How is your spouse going to be taken care of in that sense? So
sure.
That's the pre-planning on that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
See, these are hard conversations. It's nothing we want to think about, and we don't want to think about cutting people out of our lives, but you need to try to think ahead. Also, try to understand, attorneys suggest that we review our wills and all of our estate documents, but every 3 to 5 years, because our lives do change. And we want to make sure that our wishes, from a couple of years ago are still current in what we want.
Sure. That makes sense, because you obviously may have acquired more assets, more houses, more cars, or just, more savings. So, you want to make sure that that your will keeps up with what you've accumulated. Correct?
Absolutely. And the first time you do it, you may be married and don't have any children. Well, down the road, all of a sudden there's kids, and then all of a sudden the kids get married and there's grandkids, and all of a sudden now your estate looks entirely different than it did when you first did it.
Awesome. Good stuff. This is really good stuff.
Then your end of life requests. These are when we start looking at when our health is failing us. And especially now we're talking about being in the middle of a pandemic with COVID-19 and people getting ill, and within 3 days they're on life support. I mean, these horrifying stories. So this is another reason to have your will in place, as well as your living will, what your end of life wishes are, and your healthcare power of attorney. Who is it that you want to make decisions for you if you're in a coma and can't make those for you? And now with the HIPAA laws, which are the federal laws protecting privacy, your health privacy, that we need to make sure that you have a person designated to be able to speak to the doctors and to the hospitals and make sure that your wishes are carried out. Okay. Some people have a DNR, do not resuscitate. Well, if you're a relatively young, healthy person, a doctor is not going to honor, I've been told that, will not honor a DNR. If you're on a surgical table and you stop breathing and your heart stops, if the anesthesiologist feels that with medication you can be brought back, they will not honor your do not resuscitate.
Oh, wow, really?
So, absolutely. I mean, it was horrifying. We went through this with my father as his end of life was coming. So you need a personal advocate other than your doctor in a hospital to make sure that your wishes are carried out absolutely as closely as possible. And I can't stress that enough. And this again needs to be somebody you trust and somebody that won't fall apart when the time comes. God bless my father. When my mother was failing, she was on life support, and my father was an emotional wreck. He could not make decisions to end the life of his wife.
Sure.
Fortunately, he had 5 adult children that we were able to support him and, make some of those tough decisions that, he went along with. But again, it's something that you don't want your children or your spouse necessarily in the moment have to make those decisions. It's just fraught with horrible guilt and emotions and what ifs and second guessing. So have your wishes down in writing, have them copied at your doctor's office, your hospitals in the area, and obviously a copy with your estate documents so the family knows where it is and it's there and it can be taken care of.
Well, like you said earlier too, it's a love letter to your family, but what it does is it's already going to be a tough time. And you want to make it as easy as you possibly can for your loved ones, upon your passing.
Well, that's it. It's if your mother says that she is now at the point of her life that if her heart fails, she does not want Herculean, measures being taken to bring her back. Just let her go in peace.
Right.
If she has that in writing and you follow her wishes, you have a clear conscience. Obviously, you're going to miss her and mourn her, but you know that what you're asking the hospital and the doctors to do is what your mother wants to have done.
Right.
And you can move forward from there.
Right.
And that's huge. That's huge. So choose someone wisely, again, to be your power of attorney for healthcare and have an alternate. So the primary is normally your spouse, and then have someone else available there. And, frequently is an adult child that does that.
Sure.
And if you are unmarried, make sure that you have this conversation with someone that knows and loves you. And, go out and buy a bottle of wine and have the conversation and just let them know what your wishes are and let them know about the power of attorney for healthcare. Sure. And where it is and what you want them to do.
Sure.
Okay. And then we move down to the healthcare power of attorney. We move on to the executor of your estate. And let me get out of here. I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. So we talk about the healthcare power of attorney, the physician's directive. The executor is your personal representative. They are the person that is going to take your physical will and make sure that your wishes are carried out to the letter.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what they say.
It's everything from the first call. They may not be calling the funeral home. They may be, but they're the ones that are going to order the death certificates. They're the ones that are going to be contacting the life insurance companies and your securities and your 401k and perhaps even your employer, depending, DMV, Social Security. They're just going to have to go down through a litany. And this is one of the benefits of being a Legal Shield member is that we have informed our children, they have the will, they'll have the physical will. We've got a binder for them. But the first call after calling the funeral home is to call our Legal Shield law firm and say, my mother has passed away and I have her will. Can you please help me walk through what I need to do?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because more than likely, you're going to be a mess emotionally and to try to think clearly and what to do. I was such a mess when my mother passed away. I couldn't even make a phone call. I couldn't even notify anyone of her passing, yet alone at that moment try to do something. So having an advocate, a law firm that can walk you through is huge. Absolutely huge. Sure. Okay. So your executor, make sure it's somebody that is responsible, someone who is organized. I have been told that even an average estate with no great complications, it may take a year or two to have everything wrapped up.
Wow.
So it's somebody, that, can be there and kind of hang in there and do what's necessary to make sure that everything is wrapped up and the way it should be.
Wow. Well, because it could take time to sell property like a home or something like that. And so I can see why it would take
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
And to distribute things and make sure everything's liquidated
Sure.
and distributed the way you want it. Again, have a secondary person in case the first, for some reason, cannot fulfill the duties of being an executor.
Sure.
Speak to your attorney.
Mhm.
I understand that an executor can receive funds from your estate to compensate them for time being spent.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
um, for as that duty. I mean, sometimes it just may be almost a full-time job, depending on what your estate looks like.
Sure.
So talk to your estate attorney about that and what kind of wishes you want to have. We have down here about your funeral arrangements.
Mhm.
Something I strongly believe in, and I want to encourage everyone, is to look into pre-planning.
Mhm.
Again, this takes all the pressure off of your children, the family remaining, and you can plan everything from where you want to be buried. Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? What kind of casket do you want? What type of service you want? What kind of flowers? What kind of music? You
Sure.
plan the whole thing out, and hopefully you'll be able to pay for it ahead of your funeral.
Sure.
But funds from your life insurance can go to that. But
Okay.
have all of that written out and don't put it in your will, because normally your will is not read until after you have been buried.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, you want those plans obviously to be put into place much, much faster so that you are buried the way you want to be, or interred, or spread to the wind, or whatever your choices are. So have those separately.
This is a really, just kind of thinking about this. This is tough to think about. You're right. Your mortality is tough to get your mind around. That could be why there were a couple of articles that I posted this week on my Practical Finances page about Chadwick Boseman, Mr. Black himself, and also Prince, for instance, Aretha Franklin, Sonny Bono. They didn't have wills when they passed away. Maybe they just couldn't face their mortality. I don't know, but it has to be done.
It does. And if
Yeah.
I remember correctly, Sonny Bono, it took years for his estate to be settled because his families, multiple families,
Mhm.
fought over it.
Yes.
And what happens when your family starts fighting? The only beneficiary of that are lawyers,
Yes.
because they end up in court. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, all your funds are being paid to law firms. That's
Yes.
not what you want. That's
No,
the last thing that you want.
no.
So by having it in writing and designating, and one of the things to designate, if there are people you do not want to receive any money.
Mm.
So that's been known. My husband and I, we have, well, our biological children, we have biological grandchildren, we have step grandchildren, and we have adopted grandchildren. So we had to look at the distribution of that too. Do we want all of the grandchildren to get equal shares?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's a hard conversation. And then that's a hard conversation with your children who have those children.
Yeah.
Okay. But then we have a grandchild who has chosen not to be a part of the family, and this has been for many, many, many years.
Mhm.
Well, if they've chosen not to be a part of the family, then that's their choice.
Mhm.
And they will not receive any of my inheritance. But you need to specify that as well. It's as important to have the full name of the person you do not want to receive any inheritance as it is to have the names of those that you do.
I didn't think about that. We're always thinking about who we're going to distribute the funds to. I didn't think about making sure that we designate who the money's not going to also.
Right. That's
Wow.
right. And also consider, there may be people think about it. You may have family members you have not seen in years, but as soon as they hear you've passed away and they suspect that there's money,
Yeah.
they may come crawling out of the woodwork to lay a claim on your estate.
Of course.
So as long as you have a will and it's prepared correctly by a competent estate attorney, that will not be a problem
Gotcha.
for you to have that. Okay.
Awesome. It's good stuff.
Then we talk about a fiduciary bond.
Mhm.
And this can be very, very expensive. This will be a conversation that you have with your attorney. And this is to make sure that the person that is your executor that has responsibility for your funds does not abscond with it
Mhm.
or squander it.
Sure.
So the bond is that guarantee. But again, it can be tens of thousands of dollars. So make sure your executor is somebody you trust or talk required
Sure.
and under what conditions.
Okay.
Then we move on to the size of your estate.
Okay.
Now, Curtis had a fabulous in that is if you already keep track of your assets and liabilities,
Mhm.
just print that out and attach it to the will questionnaire, send that into the lawyer, and they've got all the information that you want.
Sure.
The key is just, what's saying up here is federal and state taxes and what that liability may be, so that you may be able to work with a financial planner, with the attorney, with a CPA to rearrange your estate in ways that may reduce that tax liability so that your children are able to get the most of your assets, again, rather than, the government getting it.
Sure. Sure. Makes sense.
And then they need to know about probate and, when you need to go to probate. So you go to probate if you have property.
Okay.
Is what it is. So if you own a house, you own a boat, you own a motorhome, you're going to be going to probate.
Mhm.
So, but there's ways to be able to avoid that. So speak to your estate attorney about that. Okay. Make sure you list all your bank accounts.
Mhm.
Make sure you list all your investments.
Mhm.
One of the things I forgot to mention is please make a record of your websites and your login and passwords.
Oh, yes.
In fact, if you can have an app on your phone that keeps all of those for you, and as you change them periodically, which you are supposed to do, and not use the same password for everything, which you're not supposed to do,
It's good.
that you can use that login and password and keep that in your docs so that whomever your executor is will have access to that.
Makes sense.
Really. Just like your Facebook, your Twitter,
Mhm.
your LinkedIn,
Mhm.
login and password, you want someone to be able to go in there and notify the community that you have passed on and will no longer be a part of the community.
Right.
Um,
Wow, I didn't think about that. That does make sense in terms of,
oh, absolutely.
yeah, you had to let everybody know. Hmm.
If you have pets,
Hmm.
how do you want the pets taken care of?
Sure.
Who do you want to take care of the pets?
Sure. Sure.
Just sit down and walk through your life, maybe kind of be very observant for a week.
Hmm.
What are you doing? What do you have in your life
Hmm.
that when you pass away, someone will be required to take care of it? Okay. What's on your computer?
Mm.
What are all those files? Are they yours? Are they work?
Right.
Is it intellectual property? Are you writing a book?
Okay.
Do you have photographs? What about all your family photographs? Okay, they're probably in the cloud somewhere.
That's so
How do you
true.
get them off of the cloud? The family wants to keep those. So, all these things we just don't think about because we just go through our life. We go day to day
Yes, we
and
do.
it just boom, 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 boom.
I'm sitting here
Okay.
just thinking, and I mean, it's got my mind just turning right now, about all the things that you know, I still have to do, things I can do, things I have to do, to get ready. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
On average, if I have not started a will, this universally, I guess, a person hasn't started a will, about how long do you think it can take for a person to complete one? It could, what, as little as an hour, as much as a week, or on average, what would you say?
Well, it depends how organized you are.
Sure.
Okay. Actually filling out the questionnaire,
Mhm.
the 6 pages
Mhm.
that we have in this questionnaire can probably take less than an hour.
Really? Okay.
Um, the only complication I had to do is I had to go to the safe deposit box and look up my divorce decrees to be
Mhm.
able to get the dates and the counties in which,
Yeah.
they were, that
Sure.
type of situation. If you have to go scout out some information, if you don't know, all the grandkids, dates of birth, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you don't, or, something of that nature,
Sure.
if you have to go search something out, but just filling out the document, it's very, and that's why I kind of chuckle to myself because people think this is this big horrendous thing. Actually, as far as filling out the questionnaire, it takes no time. The biggest decisions and the biggest time are the conversations.
Right.
Okay,
Huge.
sweetheart, what do you want?
Right.
You can't speak for yourself. What are your wishes?
Okay.
Who are we going to ask to raise the kids if for some reason we're not here?
Okay. So,
And,
okay.
thinking about it, it may be a one decision if they're little guys. It may be a different decision if they're teenagers.
Sure. Sure.
So this is where updating your will as time goes on can be very helpful as well, as we were talking about that.
So the clerical part is no time, but it's just the parts that we have to include in the questionnaire, for instance,
And the
could
thinking
take.
part. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
One of the things that I didn't mention was have a sheet of paper
Mhm.
with your name and your social and your date of birth on it.
Mhm.
And then list out those specific things you want to make sure a certain person has.
Sure.
You have a wedding ring, Curtis. Do you want to be buried with that? Or do you want to leave that to one of your sons,
Sure.
for the woman he marries? Ladies, we have engagement rings, our wedding rings. Do you want to be buried in them or do you want to leave them, to one of your daughters, your granddaughters, or again to your son to be able to give to his future bride?
Sure.
You may have antique china that was your grandmother's. You may have a toolbox, guys, that was your dad's. How do you want that passed on? Do you want it just in a garage sale or do you want someone specific to have it? You
Right.
may have paintings. You may have, who knows, trinkets. My grandmother, God bless her, with 11 grandchildren, we were all adults. And she said, okay, she had us each come into her home one at a time. And we were able to pick one thing that was special to us that we wanted to make sure we got. And she'd put a sticker on the bottom, she'd put it behind the paintings, and that was our special item. And the funny thing was, as time went on, I watched during holidays, we'd be there
Mhm.
and we'd all, my cousins and I would be lifting things up and, looking behind things to see, who was getting that sculpture, who was getting that
Sure.
painting or whatever. But it was so reassuring that when she did pass that I had that thing that I was so special to me. I didn't have to try to find a way to get that.
Sure. Sure.
See, this is what all of this is doing, and it's
She's
so
very
wonderful.
well organized, I tell you.
Yep, when
Wow.
we get it done. And then the last thing is once you get the your questionnaire done, you obviously want to make sure that you sign it
Mhm.
and you want to date it and have your contact information. Now you want to make sure that you don't date it 6 months before you send it in to your estate attorney.
Okay.
So you want it within, a month or so. They want to make sure your life hasn't changed dramatically.
Sure. Sure.
And then the beautiful thing with Legal Shield as a member, and ladies and gentlemen, with Legal Shield for as little as $24.95 a month, what, $300 a year, you can have your will created, have the will questionnaire. All you have to do is email it in to the law firm in your state, and a state attorney reviews it. If they have any questions, they call you. But then within 5 business days, your completed documents will be back in the mail to you with instructions for completing them. Here
Wow.
in Tennessee, it just requires 2 witnesses
Mhm.
and a notary, and your will is legal and binding until you change it.
Wow.
As easy as that. Or again, find an estate attorney
Okay.
and just make sure they just do it, get it done.
Sure. Sure. This is fantastic. Michelle, I can't thank you enough for the information. And one of the questions I was about to ask, how do we get in contact with you? There you go.
Please don't hesitate to call me just for information.
Sure.
I believe that either you're going to see value and decide that Legal Shield is something that'll be beneficial for you and your family, not only to create your will, but in the future, like I said, to be able to have it for all the other benefits, but when the time comes for your family to be able to call and have those resources. So I'm happy to give you information. If it's something you think will work, more than happy to have you become a member. And if not, maybe somewhere down the road, it will be, or you might know of someone that this might be good for.
Sure.
So don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, this was fantastic. As I said, when I went through the presentation before, I was, highly impressed, but this is very, very necessary and great information that we all need. So listen, audience, when it's time for you to get your will, please consider speaking with Michelle, and she can guide you through the entire process. Michelle, thank you again for being my guest this week, and again giving me this great information. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's such an honor. And once again, please, those of you that are watching, please understand that I am not an attorney. So the information that I have been providing is information that I've gleaned, but before you make any decisions, please confer with an attorney and a state attorney so that your needs are met.
Well, thank you so much for that disclaimer. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you again, Michelle.
Oh, thank you, Curtis.
Well, now, please, thank you again for that, Michelle. Now, next week, all right, it's going to be the season finale of season 2 of Practical Finances. Man, time is really flying. Now, my special guest next week is going to be Geico agency owner Jeff Flowers. Now, our discussion will be about how personal insurance is essential to your overall financial plan. So if you need to contact me, please email me at curtis@practical-finances.com. You can also follow me on various social media platforms, Facebook at @practical_finances, Instagram, which is @personal_finances, YouTube, which is YouTube/practical-finances, and Twitter, which is @practical-FINA6. Again, that's @practical-FINA6. I want to thank you so much for joining me again this week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, be blessed. Have a great day.